Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. If you follow tournament fishing, you know that a few days ago, the Bass Pro Tour schedule for 2024 was just released. And me, having just qualified for the Bass Pro Tour, it's the first schedule that I get to look at in terms of fishing at the Bass Pro Tour level. So since that schedule has come out, I've had a pile of people ask me for my opinion on what the schedule is. So I'm going to walk you through the schedule, give you a quick rundown of what I personally think may go down, but more importantly, like just my opinion of the fishery. And it's kind of exciting to me because honestly, I don't get that excited over schedules. Generally speaking, with me living in Wisconsin, I'm going to be a minimum of 14 hours away from any of these fisheries. And from that standpoint, the schedule is never very exciting to me. When it does come out, I usually take a quick glance at it just to see if I have something that's relatively close. This past year, I was lucky enough to have one on the Mississippi River, which we ended up winning. But generally speaking, there are very few fisheries within 10 hours drive of my house that get tournaments put on them on a somewhat regular basis. So schedules are not generally all that important to me because I kind of just know I'm going to be traveling quite a bit anyways. But having said that, I was pretty excited to see the schedule because it is going to be my first year on the BPT. And I know based on how they drop anglers, the first year is a critical year to help boost your average moving forward. So my understanding as to how they drop anglers, they take the bottom 15 guys roughly. So if you're 65th or lower, they end up taking those 15 guys, looking at their like lifetime average, and then dropping the bottom 8 guys based on who has the lowest average. So for a rookie coming in or somebody's first year on tour, what that means is the first year is really important because if I end up in the bottom 65 after next year, I probably end up getting cut. Now, having said that, if I finish in the top 20, that's a really good year. So if year two's bad, it brings your average back up higher. So the last thing I want to do is finish in the bottom 65 next year. And because of that, I was pretty excited to see what the schedule was going to look like. Now, I got to tell you, when I first saw the schedule, I was pretty disappointed. Now, again, I don't base much off of the schedule, but when I looked at the schedule, there were some new unfamiliar lakes for me. There's 2 tidal waters, and tidal are generally have not been real good to me. And it's just a lot of unfamiliar places. So, I'm going to walk you through it, kind of give you my opinion on it. The first, and I'm going to point out too, so they also released the Major League Fishing Invitational Tournament schedule, which is what I fished this year to qualify for the BPT Tour. And as a BPT angler, I get the right to fish the invitationals if I'd like to, and I can do it to the point where I can cherry pick individual tournaments. I don't have to fish the full season. So I've gotten a lot of questions regarding if I'll fish the invitationals as well. And I really don't know yet if I'll be fishing any or not. I really like the invitational schedule. I like that a lot more than I like the BPT schedule. But the reality is I would probably need to secure a bunch more sponsors to make it financially worthwhile for me to pursue it, because there's not a ton of money to be made unless you have a really killer season like I did. Now, having said that, it would be worthwhile fishing because you can potentially, again, qualify for the BPT. And if I have a bad BPT year, then fishing the invitationals is kind of a backup plan to requalify. But it is a lot of time. It's 6 additional tournaments. So you're talking about a lot of additional, at least $30,000 in entry fees, doesn't even count your travel expenses. And you're talking about being gone quite a bit more on the road. Now, as a professional angler, tournaments are definitely something that I like to fish. And there are a bunch of tournaments on the invitational schedule that I would really like to fish next year. I just don't know financially and logistically how to make that work yet. Haven't really spent that much time looking at it, but today's video is going to be geared towards the BPT schedule. And it kicks off next year At Toledo Bend, it's January 30th through February 4th. So it's going to be one of those typical, you don't know what you're going to get in Texas tournaments. It could be snowing, it could be fish spawning. I mean, that's just kind of how it works. I've never fished Toledo Bend. I think I've had 3 or 4 tournaments at roughly the same time of year on Sam Rayburn. I think they set up similar, so I feel pretty confident I know what I'm going to be looking for. But having said that, Rayburn has always been one of those lakes that throws curveballs at me. Generally speaking, I think I've cashed in like 3 of the 4 events I've been there, but it's always come down to like one spot. I find one spot, I catch the majority of the fish out of that one spot, and it kind of saves the tournament. But I can't say I've ever had an event there where I felt like I had them dialed in. And I expect a lot to be the same with Toledo Bend. Not real excited by the fact that in order to get around out there, you're talking about having to run boat lanes. There's a lot of flooded timber. If the wind blows out of certain directions, it can be extremely rough. So I'm not a huge fan of seeing Toledo Bend on the schedule. I'm not actually a big fan of Sam Rayburn either. So to have either of those events, I generally is not something that really makes my ears perk up. But in this case, that's where we're kicking it off. And I do have a decent track record in Texas at the end of January, so hopefully that'll pan out good. After Toledo Bend, we end up going to Santee Cooper, February 20th through the 25th. Again, never been to Santee Cooper. It's a lake I've always kind of wanted to fish because it's full of giant fish, but I don't think it's an easy lake to fish, and I don't think it's going to be a smash fest for everybody. I got to imagine that those fish are going to be much more in a pre-spawn phase, so the fish will probably be catchable in a lot of different areas, a lot of different techniques. And again, it's one of those lakes that, from my understanding, is not really easy to get around. So I can't say I'm super excited to see Santee Cooper on the schedule, but at the same time, I do feel like it's a fishery that sets up good for my strong suit. So I am excited to go there. It's a bucket list type lake. Hopefully we figure it out in a couple of days of practice and get out of there with some big bags, some money in our pocket, and we get to move on to Red Crest, which is March 14th through the 17th. That's at Lay Lake, another lake I've never fished. But I will say, again, that's a lake that I feel like should set up pretty strong for my strengths. It's a river system. It's got spotted bass, largemouth, probably going to be a lot of pre-spawn fish, and I would think they're going to be a lot of different ways to catch them. Probably a lot of fish that are going to be up shallow, and I'm excited for that one. I think that'll be a fun event just with the Red Crest activities, as well as just being able to chase some big Coosa River spotted bass. Looking forward to it. That one being the Red Crest, though, does not go towards our points for the year. So not that I'll change my approach, but I'll definitely be trying to fish for the best quality fish that I can find in that event. After Red Crest, we go to Dale Hollow, April 9th through April 14th. Dale Hollow is a lake that I've got very, very limited experience on. I have been on it, not this time of year. I'm gonna guess that the majority of fish are still gonna be pre-spawn. Probably gonna be some spawning fish in early April. Great smallmouth, great largemouth. I expect that one to be a really good tournament. I expect it to probably be a forward-facing sonar event. So that's going to be something that we'll probably see really come into play there. But there's a lot of 3-pound caliber fish of both species and should set up well. I have a good track record on Cumberland, which is basically a few miles away from Dale Hollow. And most of that experience on Cumberland is right around that same time. So assuming those lakes fish similar in the month of April, I do expect that to be a fun event. Looking forward to that one. After Dale Hollow, the end of April, April 30th through May 5th, we go to Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma, not the Alabama one. So this is actually at almost the exact same time that we were at Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma this year. And I think I finished 20th or 18th. Had a good, strong event. It was not a crazy slugfest that I think a lot of us were expecting, but it definitely was a good event. I feel like I've got a lot I can build off of in that tournament, plus all the stuff I learned after the event to really kind of grow my knowledge base of that. And I am looking forward to going back there. I was surprised to see it on the schedule, but I'm excited to go back to Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma. So then after Lake Eufaula, May 18th through the 23rd is Lake Kissimmee, the Toho chain, which I really was excited to see on the schedule. And then while I was writing down the dates for this video, I recognized that that event was actually the heavy hitters event. So my assumption is that's all based off of 2023. So I don't think I can even qualify for that event, which is a bummer because I have a good track record on Toho. I love fishing Florida, and I was just looking forward to that event. So I'm kind of bummed out. I just learned that about 4 minutes ago. So I would expect that to be, I mean, it's a big fish event. They should be catching a lot of big fish, running some of those haygrass lines, chasing bluegill beds and stuff like that. But I don't think I get to fish it. I don't think I have a shot to fish it, which then means I've actually got a pretty long break between Lake Eufaula and then what would be stage 5, which is the Chowan River. Don't even know how to say it because I've never heard of it. It was one that I kind of had to do a double take when I looked at it on the schedule. The funny thing is, so when I actually Googled it to see where it was surprising to me because it turned out to be basically one of the northeastern rivers in North Carolina that feeds into the Currituck Sound, which is the northern portion of the Outer Banks, which is where, if some of you who watch my channel on a regular basis, I actually vacationed last year. My family, for my parents' 50th anniversary, rented a big beach house in the northern portion of the Outer Banks, and it was funny because you're on a long strip of sand. We were on the ocean side. You could walk 2 blocks, couple hundred yards towards the west, and you actually were on the Currituck Sound. And I remember being over there, and I just happened to run into a guy that was launching his boat at a little boat launch, and he was a guide, and he was telling me how good the largemouth bass fishing was, which blew me away because of the fact that I was so close to the ocean. But the fact was that where that portion of the Currituck Sound was still brackish water or enough fresh water for largemouth. And he told me how good that area can be for largemouth. And the little bit of Googling that I've done on the Chowan River shows that it is supposed to be a very good fishery. Lots of 20-pound class bags. Don't know anything more than that. I mean, I didn't really spend much time looking at it. It's going to be a tidal river. Probably sets up pretty similar, I would think, to the James River. I would think more so the James than the Potomac, just because the James River is like one river up from there. So lots of cypress trees, probably lots of pads, lots of grass. I'm guessing it's probably going to be somewhat difficult to get around, lots of shallow flats. We'll see. I'm looking forward to it. Tidal rivers have not necessarily been my friend, but it's still generally shallow power fishing, which is what I prefer to do. So that's early June. End of June, June 25th through June 30th, is the James River. So it's just, like I said, probably I don't know, an hour and a half away is what I'm guessing to get to the James River. Another tidal river. I was there not last year, the year before, for an MLF Invitational at roughly the same time of year, I believe. I know it was June. And fishing was a lot better than what I think people expected. I want to say I think I had 11 pounds a day, and I did not have a great finish. I finished probably right around 100th, and there were a lot of good weights, a lot of really big fish that were caught in that event. So I do have something definitely to build off of. I expect it to be a good tournament. I expect there to be lots of boats in the same general areas, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. With a lot of these fisheries so far that I've mentioned, and I'll just go to the next one, and then I'll get into that thought process. But basically then, so we have a month off and then we end the season. So stage 7 is August 6th through August 11th on the St. Lawrence River, which is a place that I've been to one time, finished second in that event. So I feel very confident that I can figure out something in a couple of days of practice to catch some good smallmouth. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do is river fish, smallmouth, and hopefully I can build off of what I did to finish second a few years ago when I was there. And I think that's one of those fisheries that everybody just enjoys going to. So the weights will be crazy good. The fishing, can be rough. It's a big, huge area. And that really just takes me to what I was just going to say a minute ago. All of these lakes and rivers are, for the most part, massive, massive fisheries. When you talk about Toledo Bend, giant lake. Santee Cooper, giant lake. Dale Hollow, not giant, but it fishes really big. Eufaula in Oklahoma, giant lake. Chowan River, James River, massive fisheries. You can probably, I don't know if there's going to be out of bounds, but you can probably run, you could run all day if you wanted to find, some bass there. And then the St. Lawrence is the same thing. You're talking 100 miles of fishable water. So in 2 days of practice, it would be really nice to have a lot more experience on all of these bodies of water. Unfortunately, I don't. I will say that I think 6 of the 7 lakes have not been on the BPT schedule yet. So even the guys that have fished a lot of these fisheries in their past probably don't have much recent experience. So that's helpful to level the playing field out. But in 2 days of practice, you're going to be really stretched out on terms of how much water you want to cover. I think picking good areas to start and spend your practice time is going to be critical. And at the same time, because they are such massive fisheries, I believe right now with the BPT, you get about a half hour from the time you launch to the time the first lines are in. So from that aspect, you do have a half hour to get to these spots. But if you're looking at running 80 miles, you're going to give up an hour of additional fishing time, which in this type of format, is not necessarily always a great thing. So you got to make sure you've got fish found if you're going to be making those massive runs. So it's a schedule that I think will be very challenging. It is a very diverse schedule. The more I look at it, the more I'm kind of like, okay, I think I can work with this. But it's going to be a fun year. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while. Last year I was excited to start the season just because I felt like I was in a good position. I feel the same way right now. Like this is going to be a long wait till the end of January for Toledo Bend. I'm excited to get the season started. I just wish it was starting sooner. When you're fishing good, you want to keep fishing. And in this case, I've got a long wait, but that means I got a lot of time to prep and get, all this other stuff ready to roll for the season. But that's my take on it, guys. I appreciate all the comments. If you've got other comments or questions that you want me to address like this, because I've probably had 10 different people reach out to me asking for this video. But this is it. This is it. They're going to be a lot of driving too. Most of these are going to be, if they're one-day drives, they're long one-day drives, 17, 18 hours. Some of these are 2-day drives, but none of these are anything I would say super close. Dale Hollow and Lake Eufaula are probably within 12-hour drives, so those are close ones for me. But other than that, this is going to be I'll be burning a lot of gas. Full-time truck driver, part-time fisherman, as we like to say. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. New video coming out tomorrow.